Do you remember that first time you saw AI working? If you're anything like me, you were taken aback, shocked at its capabilities, amazed at what a machine was capable of producing in an instant. Fast forward a few years, and now every time I use AI, I think to myself, you thought that's what I wanted? Are you serious? Today's video is for people feeling like that. For when your first prompt doesn't quite go as planned, in steps the next follow-up prompt. So today we're going to go into episode 2 of our series on follow-up prompts and cover the iteration prompt. Let's get started. Let's start out by establishing a definition of iteration prompting. Iteration prompting is when you build a new iteration or a new version of something you have already created. It's kind of like just saying, let's make a change to this output. Although this didn't used to work with image generators, Gemini's new AI model now allows you to do iteration prompting. In fact, I asked it for a picture of an alien holding an ice cream cone, and then I said, keep it all the same, but replace the ice cream cone with a microphone, and this is what I got. 3 months ago, that wasn't possible, but today, it is. Now, before we even get into our very first prompt, we need to make sure we are setting the groundwork for effective use of AI. And what that means is that we need to develop a vision in our mind. Because if we can't see where we're heading, then that means we're not in the driver's seat. And if we're not in the driver's seat, that means we are being driven. And fundamentally, that means we're not getting anywhere with AI. AI is doing everything for us, and that's not good for our brain. It's also helpful to have a vision because once you can see where you are heading, it helps you to guide AI to that final output. And it fundamentally means that if AI starts to wander this direction, you can bring it back to the primary focus of your objective. But once we have a vision in mind, we can move on to the next step, which is to put in our initial prompt. And my recommendation is to follow the RAFC framework: role, action, format, context. But if you don't know anything about that, then I would highly recommend you click that subscribe button below so that you can come back to future videos when we cover making effective prompts and how to improve our AI use. So now that your initial prompt is put in, the next step is something we should always do, and that is to evaluate the quality of the output. In other words, if there are problems going on, we need to be able to diagnose exactly what those problems are so that we can guide AI towards meeting our initial vision. But it's really important to not stop at one prompt. If you just put in a single prompt and assume that that's the best AI can do, then you are missing the majority of the power of this technology. And apologies to those students who think that AI is just going to magically do everything for them. This does mean that you need to know what good products look like. You still need to know what a good paper looks like. You still need to know that a sentence is structured well. You still need to know what a thesis statement is and whether or not it's being supported by the rest of the project, which means what you are learning in class today is still extremely important. AI will not do everything for you. So today we're going to go into 3 techniques that you can use to improve your initial output. Starting with technique number 1, be specific. Now, this is important every time you're working with AI, but when you're doing a follow-up, every single thing you give it should be exactly tied to what you are looking for. The more specific, the better. That brings us to technique number 2, where I recommend you tell AI exactly what it is you do like. AI has this tendency of changing things even when you don't want it to be changed, which is why it's important to tell it when it did a good job. So if its attention getter for what it's helping you with was fantastic, then put the attention getter in quotes and tell AI not to change a thing. And finally, that brings us to technique number 3, which is to provide AI an example. AI absolutely loves examples because it makes it easy for it to know what it's aiming for. So if there's a transition sentence out there in the world that you really like, then you can copy and paste it into AI and say, mimic the structure of this transition sentence when implementing the new transition sentence from main point number 1 to main point number 2. And while we're on providing examples, do keep in mind that even in that initial prompt, providing examples is really effective. So feel free to use this whenever you're prompting with AI. It will improve your outputs. There are a few things to keep in mind when doing iteration prompting though, starting with keep it to one change at a time. It is true that AI is capable of doing multiple things all at once, but the more tasks you give it, the lower the quality of your outputs are going to be. And it's a really subtle distinction, but something that does add up if you're trying to make a really high quality product. In the AI world, we call this task decomposition. Next, make sure you remind AI what your final end goal is. The more prompts you put into an AI system, the further it's going to start to drift away from that initial prompt you worked so hard on. So make sure to remind it to stay on task. This is our ultimate goal, and don't you forget it. Next, make sure you don't ever assume that more prompts equals better output. The second prompt is not always better than the first, and the third is not always better than the second. In fact, sometimes I'll prompt AI 20 times, and the best one is number 7. And finally, it's the 80-20 rule. Always do the final touches yourself. AI can get us really close to that final product, but it's important to make it our own. So do not forget the editing process. This is your project, not AI's, so your job is to take it across the finish line. I'm Luke with Groovy Education, where we have trained over 250 schools on responsible AI integration. And if you're interested in having us train your school, the links can be found in the description below, as well as links to our school community where teachers can gain access to all kinds of resources for their classroom. If you like this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and send it to another teacher so they can show it to their students. But until next time, see ya.